15 R&B divas and their struggles with sex addiction. Desire can become a shadow that follows anyone. One lonely night, one forbidden touch, one secret habit that grows too loud to hide. For some women, what began as love, hunger, or escape became a story the world judged before it ever understood. Under the stage lights, they looked flawless. Sequins, power notes, standing ovations, and million-dollar smiles. But behind the dressing room doors, some carried shame, rumors, compulsions, and private wounds that were softened, denied, or buried beneath the glamour. Today on Black Hollywood Uncut, we're pulling back the curtain on 15 R&B divas and the desires that made the industry whisper. Stay until the final second, subscribe, and hit the bell, because the last stories may change everything. Aretha Franklin, die age 76 in 2018. Aretha Franklin was not simply a singer. She was the queen of soul, a voice so powerful it could shake a church, command a stage, and silence an entire room with one note. From Respect to Chain of Fools, from gospel roots to global superstardom, Aretha became more than an artist. She became a symbol of black womanhood, strength, dignity, and emotional truth. But behind the crown was a woman the world never fully understood. Aretha's public image was often wrapped in elegance, faith, and authority. She stood before audiences like royalty, dressed in gowns, surrounded by applause, carrying herself with the confidence of someone born to rule music. Yet beneath that polished image was a life shaped by pressure, heartbreak, motherhood, complicated relationships, and the burden of being judged more harshly because she was a powerful black woman. Aretha became a mother at a very young age, long before the world was ready to talk honestly about the pain, confusion, and vulnerability that can exist behind early fame and private struggle. Instead of being treated with compassion, women like Aretha were often surrounded by whispers. If they loved deeply, they were called difficult. If they showed desire, they were called reckless. If they protected their private lives, people invented stories to fill the silence. That is what makes Aretha's story so important. She did not need scandal to be fascinating. Her voice already carried everything: longing, pride, sensuality, heartbreak, and survival. When she sang about respect, it was not just a lyric. It sounded like a demand from every woman who had ever been underestimated, touched by pain, or told to stay quiet. In her later years, Aretha faced serious health struggles, but she remained connected to music until the end. On August 16, 2018, Aretha Franklin died at the age of 76 from pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. The world mourned not only a singer, but a cultural monument. Aretha Franklin's legacy should not be reduced to rumors about her private life. She was complex, human, proud, wounded, and extraordinary. She gave soul music its royal voice, and even after her passing, that voice still rises, demanding respect, carrying pain, and reminding the world that a woman's power should never be mistaken for something to fear. Tina Turner, die, age 83, in 2023. Tina Turner was not just a singer. She was electricity in human form. The voice, the legs, the hair, the movement, the scream that sounded like survival. Everything about Tina made the stage feel dangerous in the best way. When she performed, she did not simply entertain the crowd. She took command of it. She turned pain into rhythm, heartbreak into power, and fear into fire. But behind that explosive image was a woman who had paid a heavy price to become free. Tina's early life and first marriage were marked by abuse, control, and emotional damage that could have destroyed her. For years, the public saw the glamour and the hits, but behind the curtain, she was fighting for her dignity, her voice, and her own future. Her story was never just about fame. It was about escape. That is why Tina's sensuality should never be reduced to gossip. She was not powerful because of rumors. She was powerful because she reclaimed her body, her image, and her stage after people tried to control all three. When she danced, it was not only seductive, it was defiant. When she sang, it was not only passionate, it sounded like a woman refusing to be broken. In the 1980s, Tina Turner made one of the greatest comebacks in music history. What's Love Got to Do with It transformed her from a survivor of the past into a global superstar on her own terms. She was older than many pop stars around her, but that only made her victory more powerful. Tina proved that a woman could be mature, sensual, wounded, and unstoppable all at once. Later in life, she found peace in Switzerland, far from the chaos that once surrounded her. On May 24, 2023, Tina Turner died at the age of 83, after years of health struggles. Her death closed a legendary chapter, but it did not dim her fire. Tina Turner should be remembered not as a scandal, not as a rumor, and not as a woman too intense to love. She should be remembered as a force who turned suffering into freedom. She did not just survive the storm, she became the storm, and taught generations of women that power can be beautiful, loud, sensual, and completely their own. Whitney Houston died age 48 in 2012. Whitney Houston had the kind of voice that made people believe perfection was possible. Clear, soaring, emotional, and effortless. Her sound seemed almost unreal. From Greatest Love of All to I Will Always Love You, Whitney did not simply sing notes. She lifted them until they felt like prayers. She became America's golden voice, a woman whose beauty, grace, and talent turned her into one of the most celebrated artists in music history. But behind the angelic image was a woman under impossible pressure. Whitney was expected to be flawless, the perfect daughter, the perfect diva, the perfect crossover star, the perfect symbol of elegance. Every performance was praised, but every private choice was watched. Fame gave her a throne, but it also built a cage around her. The world loved her voice, yet often treated her humanity like a headline. Her private life became the subject of constant speculation. Her relationships, her marriage, her friendships, and her struggles were discussed in public with little mercy. Robin Crawford later wrote about the deep bond she shared with Whitney, adding another layer to a life already surrounded by questions, pressure, and judgment. But Whitney's story should not be reduced to rumors about who she loved. What matters is that she lived under a spotlight that rarely allowed her to simply be human. As the years passed, Whitney's battle with substance use became painfully visible. The same voice that once sounded untouchable began carrying signs of exhaustion. Fans watched with concern, critics circled, and the media turned her pain into entertainment. Yet even in her hardest moments, there were flashes of the brilliance that made the world fall in love with her. On February 11, 2012, Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. She died at the age of 48. The official cause was accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. Her death was devastating because it felt lonely, sudden, and painfully human. Whitney Houston was more than a tragic ending. She was a once-in-a-generation voice, a woman of beauty and vulnerability, strength and struggle. The world may remember the headlines, but her true legacy lives in the sound, that breathtaking voice rising above everything, still powerful enough to break hearts decades later. Donna Summer, died age 63, in 2012. Donna Summer was never just the queen of disco. She became the sound of an era, when dance floors replaced living rooms, when flashing lights, mirrored ceilings, and endless nights seemed to promise freedom from every worry. With hits like Love to Love You Baby, Hot Stuff, and Last Dance, Donna transformed popular music, proving that disco could be sensual, emotional, and unforgettable all at the same time. When Love to Love You Baby exploded onto the charts in 1975, it immediately sparked controversy. Its breathy vocals and intimate atmosphere shocked many listeners, while others praised it for pushing musical boundaries. The song made Donna an international sensation, but it also created an image that followed her for decades. To some people, she became the symbol of desire itself. Yet the woman behind the microphone was far more complicated than the headlines suggested. Like many female stars of her generation, Donna discovered that confidence could easily be misunderstood. If she embraced femininity, she was labeled provocative. If she performed with passion, critics questioned her character instead of celebrating her artistry. Her public image often overshadowed the depth of her voice, her songwriting, and the remarkable discipline that built her career. Throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s, Donna dominated the charts, collecting awards and selling millions of records. But fame came with pressure. Endless touring, constant media attention, and the demands of remaining at the top took a personal toll. Away from the spotlight, she experienced emotional struggles and searched for balance between worldwide success and a quieter private life. As the years passed, Donna shifted her priorities, focusing more on family, faith, and personal peace, while continuing to record and perform. She remained respected, not only for her music, but also for her resilience and professionalism. Even after disco faded from mainstream popularity, her influence never disappeared. Countless pop, dance, and R&B artists continued to build on the foundation she had helped create. On May 17, 2012, Donna Summer died at the age of 63 after battling lung cancer. Her passing marked the end of one of the most influential careers in modern music. Donna Summer's legacy should never be defined by controversy alone. She gave dance music a voice, confidence, and emotion unlike anyone before her. Long after the disco lights dimmed, her music continued to remind the world that joy, freedom, and vulnerability could all exist within the same unforgettable song. Chaka Khan, 73 age. Now Chaka Khan is one of the rare artists whose voice seems untouched by time. Rich, fearless, and instantly recognizable, she has spent more than 5 decades proving why she is known around the world as the Queen of Funk. From her early years with Rufus to timeless classics like I'm Every Woman, Ain't Nobody, and Through the Fire, Chaka has never relied on trends. She built her career on extraordinary talent, powerful emotion, and complete artistic confidence. Unlike many performers who carefully protected a polished public image, Chaka always projected honesty. She spoke openly about love, passion, mistakes, and personal growth. That honesty often made her appear bold during an era when female performers were expected to be graceful but restrained. Her performances carried confidence, strength, and sensuality, qualities that sometimes attracted unfair judgment rather than admiration. The entertainment industry frequently tried to place women into simple categories. They were expected to be either elegant or rebellious, soft or seductive. Chaka refused those limits. She could sing a tender ballad with breathtaking vulnerability one moment and deliver a high-energy funk performance the next. Her stage presence reflected freedom rather than scandal, and that freedom became one of the defining features of her career. Like many legendary artists, Chaka also faced personal challenges. She has spoken publicly about periods of addiction, recovery, and rebuilding her life. Instead of allowing those struggles to define her, she chose to confront them honestly. That willingness to acknowledge difficult chapters only strengthened the respect many fans felt toward her. Her journey became one not only of musical success, but also of resilience and personal transformation. Even as younger generations entered the spotlight, Chaka Khan remained a respected influence across R&B, soul, funk, pop, and hip-hop. Her songs continue to be sampled, covered, and celebrated by artists who recognize the originality of her voice. Few singers possess a vocal style that can be identified within seconds, yet Chaka achieved exactly that. Now 73 years old, Chaka Khan continues to stand as one of the greatest living voices in American music. Her story is not about scandal or sensational rumors. It is about endurance, authenticity, and artistic excellence. While fashions changed and musical trends came and went, Chaka remained exactly what she had always been, a fearless performer who refused to compromise her identity. That lasting authenticity is why her influence continues to inspire audiences around the world today. Patti LaBelle, 82 age now. Patti LaBelle is more than a singer. She is a living monument of soul, gospel, R&B, and pure stage power. For decades, her voice has carried joy, heartbreak, faith, and fire, with a force few performers could ever match. From her early days with LaBelle to solo classics like If Only You Knew, New Attitude, and On My Own, Patti built a career on emotion so strong it could lift an audience out of its seat. But Patti's power has never come only from vocal range. It comes from presence. When she steps on stage, she does not simply perform a song, she lives inside it. Her voice can begin soft and graceful, then suddenly rise into something fierce, almost volcanic. That emotional intensity made her beloved, but it also made her hard for the industry to place into a neat box. For years, black female performers were expected to be talented, beautiful, and controlled. Patti LaBelle refused to be small. She could be elegant, funny, sensual, spiritual, dramatic, and explosive all at once. That kind of freedom made her unforgettable. It also meant people sometimes misunderstood her passion as something excessive, when in truth it was part of her artistry. In the original transcript, Patti is described through a highly sensual lens, but the safer and more accurate truth is this: Patti LaBelle has always embodied emotional honesty. Her performances feel intimate not because of scandal, but because she sings as if every lyric is happening in real time. Love, longing, heartbreak, desire, and survival all pass through her voice like electricity. Now 82 years old, Patti remains one of the most respected living legends in American music. Her influence stretches across generations of singers who learned from her boldness, her phrasing, her confidence, and her refusal to apologize for being powerful. Patti LaBelle's story is not about rumors. It is about a woman who made emotion feel dangerous, beautiful, and sacred. She showed that a black woman on stage did not have to whisper her feelings to be accepted. She could shout, cry, laugh, command, and still be loved. That is why Patti's legacy still burns bright, not as gossip, but as proof that true soul music begins when a singer dares to feel everything. Etta James died, age 73 in 2012. Etta James did not sing like someone trying to sound perfect. She sang like someone telling the truth with a wounded heart. Her voice was raw, smoky, powerful, and full of scars. When she sang, "At Last," the world heard romance. But when she sang deeper blues and soul, listeners heard something heavier: hunger, pain, survival, and a lifetime of emotions too large to hide. Born Jamsetta Hawkins, Etta's life was marked by hardship from the beginning. She grew up without the stability many children need, and that early loneliness followed her into adulthood. Music became both her escape and her confession. Every note seemed to carry the story of a woman who had loved hard, suffered deeply, and refused to pretend she was untouched by life. Etta James became one of the great voices of blues, soul, R&B, rock and roll, and jazz. She could sound tender one moment and dangerous the next. That emotional range made her unforgettable, but it also reflected the battles behind the music. Throughout her life, Etta struggled with addiction, difficult relationships, health problems, and the heavy cost of fame. She did not have the clean, polished image some audiences expected from female stars. She was rougher, more honest, and more human. In the transcript, Etta is presented as a symbol of raw sensuality, but her real story is stronger than exaggerated rumor. Etta's sensual power came through her voice, not through scandal. She sang desire in a way that felt lived in. She sang heartbreak, as if it had left fingerprints on her soul. She made audiences feel that love was not always gentle. Sometimes it was messy, desperate, and impossible to forget. On January 20th, 2012, Etta James died at the age of 73, after battling leukemia and other health complications. Her death marked the end of a life that had been both brilliant and difficult, triumphant and painful. Etta James should not be remembered only as a troubled star. She should be remembered as a survivor whose voice turned damage into art. Her music still sounds alive because it was never empty performance. It was confession. It was defiance. It was the sound of a woman who had been broken many times, but never silenced. Sylvia Robinson died age 76 in 2011. Sylvia Robinson died age 76 in 2011. Sylvia Robinson was not just a singer, songwriter, or producer. She was one of the hidden architects of modern black music. Long before the world called her the mother of hip-hop, Sylvia had already built a career that crossed R&B, soul, pop, and the business side of music. She understood something many people in the industry underestimated. A woman could be sensual, strategic, creative, and powerful all at the same time. In the 1970s, Sylvia shocked listeners with Pillow Talk, a record that blurred the line between song and private confession. Its soft vocals, intimate rhythm, and breathy atmosphere made it controversial, but also unforgettable. At a time when female desire was often expected to stay hidden, Sylvia turned sensuality into sound. She did not shout for permission. She whispered, and the world listened. But Sylvia Robinson's story goes far beyond one provocative hit. She became a businesswoman in an industry that rarely welcomed women into positions of real power. With Sugar Hill Records, she helped bring hip-hop from the streets and parties into recorded music history. Rapper's Delight did not just become a hit. It opened a door that would change global culture forever. That is what makes Sylvia so fascinating. She lived at the crossroads of pleasure, ambition, and control. While many women in music were treated as performers only, Sylvia became a creator of opportunities. She saw talent, shaped records, made deals, and helped introduce a new genre to the masses. Her influence reached far beyond her own voice. In the transcript, Sylvia is framed through a sensual and scandalous lens, but the stronger truth is that her sensual image was only one part of her power. She was bold because she understood her body, her music, and her business instincts. She knew that desire could be art, but she also knew that ownership mattered. On September 29, 2011, Sylvia Robinson died at the age of 76. Her passing closed the life of a woman who helped reshape music from behind the scenes and in front of the microphone. Sylvia Robinson should be remembered not as gossip, but as a pioneer. She gave women a voice in sensual soul, then helped give hip-hop its first major commercial platform. Her legacy is not only in the songs she sang, but in the culture she helped create. Natalie Cole, die. Age 65 in 2015. Natalie Cole was born into music royalty, but she spent her life proving that her voice was not just an inheritance. As the daughter of Nat King Cole, she carried a famous name before she ever stepped fully into the spotlight. That name opened doors, but it also created a shadow. The world expected elegance, perfection, and grace. Natalie had to fight to show that she was not only someone's daughter, she was an artist with her own fire. When she arrived in the 1970s, Natalie brought a fresh blend of soul, R&B, pop, and jazz. Songs like This Will Be, I've Got Love on My Mind, and later Unforgettable, showed different sides of her gift. She could be joyful, romantic, refined, and emotionally wounded, all within the same career. Her voice had beauty, but it also carried struggle beneath the polish. Behind the glamorous image, Natalie's life was complicated. Fame came early, and with it came pressure, partying, heartbreak, and battles with substance abuse that she later spoke about openly. She did not live a perfect life, and that is part of what made her story human. In an industry that often punished women for being honest about pain, Natalie eventually chose truth over image. The transcript frames Natalie through rumors of pleasure and hidden love, but the more responsible version of her story is deeper than that. Natalie Cole represented a woman trying to balance legacy, desire, addiction, recovery, motherhood, and artistic survival. She was not simply a glamorous singer in beautiful dresses. She was someone who fell, fought, rebuilt, and kept singing. Her comeback became one of the most powerful chapters of her life. When she recorded Unforgettable as a duet with her late father's original vocals, it became more than a song. It was a bridge between generations, between grief and healing, between the little girl who lost her father and the woman who finally found her own place beside him. On December 31, 2015, Natalie Cole died at the age of 65 from congestive heart failure, with underlying health issues. Her death marked the end of a life filled with talent, turbulence, and resilience. Natalie Cole's legacy should not be reduced to scandal. She was a survivor, a daughter, a mother, and a voice that carried both elegance and pain. She proved that even under the weight of a legendary name, a woman could still create a legacy of her own. Betty Davis died, age 77 in 2022. Betty Davis was not built for the rules of her time. She was too bold, too raw, too sexual, too fearless. And that was exactly what made her unforgettable. Long before the music industry knew how to handle women who wrote openly about desire, power, and control, Betty walked in like a warning. She did not ask permission to be provocative. She made provocation part of her art. Born Betty Mabry, she became known not only for her connection to Miles Davis, but for the sound she created on her own. Her funk was aggressive, sweaty, and electric. Songs like "If I'm in Luck, I Might Get Picked Up" and "They Say I'm Different" did not sound like polite entertainment. They sounded like a woman kicking down the door of respectability and daring the world to look away. In the 1970s, that kind of confidence came with a cost. Radio stations were hesitant. Critics often misunderstood her. Some audiences were shocked by her lyrics, her clothes, and her unapologetic stage presence. But Betty was not trying to be scandalous for attention. She was expressing a truth that many women were taught to hide, that desire, anger, confidence, and creativity could all live in the same body. The original transcript frames Betty through extreme sensual rumors, but the real story is already powerful enough. Betty Davis challenged the music industry because she refused to soften herself. She wrote like a woman who had been underestimated too many times. She performed like someone who knew her body belonged to her, not to public approval. Her influence became clearer with time. Though she never achieved massive mainstream success during her peak, later generations recognized her as a pioneer. Artists in funk, rock, soul, R&B, and hip-hop found inspiration in her courage. She helped open the door for women who wanted to be loud, sexual, strange, independent, and fully in control of their image. On February 9, 2022, Betty Davis died at the age of 77. Her passing reminded the world that some legends are not fully understood until years later. Betty Davis was not a rumor. She was a revolution. She turned female desire into funk, refusal into rhythm, and rebellion into a voice that still sounds dangerous today. Laverne Baker, died age 67 in 1997. Laverne Baker was one of the women who helped build the bridge between blues, R&B, and rock and roll. Before the world had a clear language for female power in popular music, Laverne already had it in her voice. She could be playful, commanding, smooth, and fierce, all in the same song. With hits like Tweedledee, Jim Dandy, and I Cried a Tear, she became one of the most important black female voices of the 1950s. But Laverne's career was never only about music. It was also about survival, in an industry that took heavily from black artists, while often giving them too little credit, too little money, and too little protection. Like many performers of her era, she watched white artists cover black records and sometimes achieve greater commercial success, with sounds that black musicians had created first. That injustice followed her career, but it never erased her impact. On stage, Laverne Baker had presence. She did not need to chase attention. Her confidence did the work for her. She carried herself with glamour, humor, and command, showing audiences that a black woman could be both elegant and bold. The original transcript describes her through a highly sensual lens, but her real power came from something stronger than gossip. Laverne had charisma, the kind that made people remember her long after the song ended. Her voice carried the spirit of early rock and R&B at a time when the music business was changing fast. She helped shape the sound that would influence generations of singers, even when history did not always give her the spotlight she deserved. Later in life, her contributions were recognized more fully, including her induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Laverne also faced serious health struggles. After years of performing and living a life full of travel, reinvention, and hardship, she died on March 10, 1997, at the age of 67. Laverne Baker's legacy should not be reduced to rumors about desire or scandal. She was a pioneer, a survivor, and a commanding voice in American music. She helped prove that black women could shape rock and R&B with style, strength, and attitude. Long after her passing, her voice still carries the confidence of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Millie Jackson, 81 age. Now, Millie Jackson was never the kind of artist who asked permission to speak. She built her career on saying the things other women were expected to swallow. In an industry that often wanted black female singers to be polished, sweet, and easy to market, Millie came forward with a voice full of humor, heat, frustration, and truth. She did not just sing about love. She talked through it, argued with it, laughed at it, and exposed the messy reality behind it. Her music felt different because it sounded like real life. Songs like, "If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right," and her bold spoken-word monologues gave listeners something rawer than a perfect love song. Millie sang about affairs, betrayal, desire, disappointment, and emotional hunger, with a directness that shocked some people and liberated others. She made women in the audience feel seen, especially those who had been told to keep quiet about what they wanted. But that honesty came with a price. Critics often labeled her too explicit, too aggressive, or too provocative. Radio stations were sometimes cautious with her material, and the mainstream industry did not always know what to do with a woman who refused to soften her words. Yet Millie understood her audience. She knew there were women listening who had lived the exact stories she was singing. The transcript frames Millie through a highly sexual lens, but the more accurate truth is that her power came from fearless storytelling. She did not need rumors to be controversial. Her art was already bold enough. She turned adult relationships into theater, comedy, confession, and confrontation. That made her one of the most distinctive voices in soul and R&B. Now 81 years old, Millie Jackson remains a symbol of unapologetic expression. Her influence can be heard in later artists who mix singing, talking, sensuality, comedy, and emotional honesty without shame. Millie's legacy is not about scandal. It is about voice, a woman's voice, loud and unfiltered, refusing to be edited into something polite. She proved that soul music could be funny, sensual, angry, wounded, and brutally honest all at once. And that is why people still remember her. Because Millie Jackson said what many only dared to think. Marlena Shaw. Die, age 84. In 2024. Marlena Shaw was the kind of singer who did not need to shout to take control of a room. Her power lived in subtlety, a pause before a line, a smoky phrase, a glance in the music, a note that seemed to carry an entire memory. Blending jazz, soul, blues, and R&B, Marlena created a sound that felt intimate, intelligent, and deeply human. She was not only a vocalist, she was a storyteller. To many listeners, Marlena is forever tied to California Soul, a song that became bigger across generations, sampled and rediscovered by fans who may not have known her full catalog, but instantly recognized her spirit. Her voice carried warmth and sophistication, but also something quietly sensual. She could make a lyric feel like a secret being shared across a dimly lit room. Unlike louder public figures, Marlena maintained an image of elegance and mystery. She was not built on scandal. She did not need controversy to hold attention. Her artistry came from control, timing, and emotional intelligence. That is why the original transcripts focus on rumors and hidden desires should be treated carefully. The stronger truth is that Marlena Shaw's music naturally carried intimacy without needing unverified stories attached to her name. Her performances often felt personal because she understood how to let emotion breathe. She could move through jazz clubs, soul arrangements, and socially conscious material with grace. Whether singing about love, longing, identity, or everyday struggle, Marlena brought a rare maturity to her delivery. She sounded like someone who had watched life closely and learned how to turn observation into melody. As decades passed, her influence only grew. Hip-hop producers, DJs, jazz fans, soul collectors, and new listeners continued finding her work. That late recognition proved something important. Some voices do not fade just because the mainstream spotlight moves away. They wait, quietly, until another generation is ready to hear them. On January 19, 2024, Marlena Shaw died at the age of 84. Her passing marked the loss of a refined, soulful, and deeply respected artist whose music traveled farther than many people realized. Marlena Shaw's legacy should not be reduced to whispers about her private life. She was a master of mood, restraint, and feeling. Her voice remains a quiet flame, elegant, emotional, and impossible to forget once it reaches you. Jean Knight, die age 80, in 2023. Jean Knight was one of those voices that could walk into a room before she did. Strong, playful, sharp, and full of attitude, she gave R&B one of its most unforgettable declarations with Mr. Big Stuff. The song was more than a hit. It was a warning wrapped in groove. A woman looking straight at arrogance, ego, and male confidence, then refusing to be impressed. In the early 1970s, when many women in music were still expected to sound sweet, grateful, or heartbroken, Jean Knight sounded confident. She did not beg. She did not shrink. She sang with the energy of a woman who had seen enough to know exactly what she would not tolerate. That made her stand out. Mr. Big Stuff became a massive success because it felt funny, bold, and truthful all at once. But Jean's story was never only about one record. She represented a kind of black female confidence that the industry often tried to soften. Her voice carried sass, humor, sensuality, and command. But it was not scandal that made her powerful. It was personality. She could turn a simple lyric into a full attitude, making listeners feel as if she were speaking directly to someone who needed to be put in their place. The transcript frames Jean through rumors and exaggerated stories about desire. But the safer truth is stronger. Jean Knight's public image was built on independence and fearless expression. She sang about women who knew their worth, women who could laugh at men's arrogance, and women who did not need permission to take up space. Like many soul artists of her era, Jean did not always receive the long-term mainstream spotlight her talent deserved. Yet her signature hit endured. It continued to appear in films, commercials, samples, and memories, proving that one unforgettable performance can outlive decades of changing trends. On November 22, 2023, Jean Knight died at the age of 80. Her passing reminded fans that soul music was not built only by the biggest global names, but also by artists whose voices captured a feeling so clearly that generations never forgot it. Jean Knight's legacy should not be reduced to gossip. She was a woman of rhythm, humor, and confidence, a singer who made arrogance sound small and self-respect sound irresistible. Barbara Mason, 78. Age. Now, Barbara Mason built her legacy with softness, but that softness was never weakness. Her voice carried a quiet ache, the kind that made listeners lean closer instead of pulling away. When she released Yes, I'm Ready, as a teenager, she gave soul music one of its most tender confessions. The song did not need dramatic screams or heavy production. It worked because it felt honest, like a young woman trying to understand love before the world had finished teaching her what it meant. As her career developed, Barbara became known for writing and singing about romance, desire, heartbreak, and complicated relationships with unusual directness. She did not always present love as clean or simple. In songs like From His Woman to You, she explored emotional territory that many artists avoided: jealousy, loyalty, longing, and the painful triangle between love and betrayal. That honesty gave her music a grown-up weight, even when her delivery stayed smooth and controlled. The transcript describes Barbara through a sensual lens, but her real artistic power came from emotional intimacy. She had a way of making private feelings sound musical without turning them into cheap scandal. Her voice could feel like a whisper, a confession, or a letter never meant to be read aloud. That made her different from louder soul performers. Barbara did not force emotion onto the audience. She invited them into it. For women listening to her records, Barbara Mason offered recognition. She sang about wanting to be loved, wanting to be chosen, and wanting to be understood without shame. In an era when female desire was often judged, her music treated those feelings as human. That is why her songs still matter. They captured the tension between innocence and experience, between romance and reality. Now 78 years old, Barbara Mason remains respected as a soul and R&B singer-songwriter whose influence goes beyond chart positions. Her work helped open space for women to write honestly about relationships from their own point of view. Barbara Mason's legacy is not about rumors or exaggeration. It is about vulnerability. She proved that a woman could sing softly and still be powerful, could speak of desire without losing dignity, and could turn the quietest heartbreak into a song that lasts for generations. What makes these stories so painful is not desire itself, but the world that turned desire into shame. These women lived under lights that celebrated their voices, yet judged their bodies, their choices, and their private hunger. Fear, gossip, and industry pressure forced many truths into silence. But silence never erased their greatness. Behind every rumor, every misunderstood headline, and every whispered accusation, there was genius. These R&B divas gave us soul, fire, heartbreak, confidence, and songs that still breathe decades later. Their final truth is not scandal. Their final truth is survival through music. So now we want to hear from you. Which of these artists' stories broke your heart the most? And whose music do you still keep on heavy rotation today? Drop your thoughts below. Like this video, subscribe to Hollywood Uncut, and hit the notification bell for more unvarnished stories.